We're looking at the 2024 Mazda MX-5 Miata. Now, believe it or not, this has been updated for 2024. We're now on the ND3, so still the same generation, but with lots of new stuff meriting the 3 instead of the 2. Miata, really interestingly, comes from Old German meaning prize or reward, and MX-5 means Mazda Experimental 5. But if you travel in enthusiast circles, you've probably heard the legend or joke that Miata is an acronym standing for Miata is always the answer. And here's the reason. This is the quintessential roadster. It was introduced at a time when there weren't really any roadsters on the market anymore. It brought that back, and it's still available when many others have now fallen by the wayside. So, always the answer? Probably pretty fitting, and let's dive into why. As you will have noticed, I have the hard top, so the Miata RF, which stands for Retractable Fastback. Now, the front end looks very similar to the ND2. Basically, the change is that the DRLs are now inside the headlight housing instead of down here where they used to be. They are not LED on the base trim, but they are for all the others. There is a new color for 2024. It's Aero Gray. It's that kind of flat, cool gray that's become so fashionable. Obviously, this is not that. This is zircon sand. I really love this profile, and I especially love the C-pillars. I've always been a sucker for buttress C-pillars. Now, this one is the club trim, and it has the available package that you can only get on the club trim, which is the BBS Recaro. So we've got Brembo front brakes, red brake calipers front and rear, and these 17-inch gunmetal gray BBS wheels. At the back, we have new LED taillights. They look really similar to the ND2 taillights, so not much different back here. You'll notice we have a relatively high, I say relatively because it's still basically waist height for me, relatively high rear brake light. That is, of course, for visibility because this is a small car, and we're gonna see how small when we get inside. I almost always really like body-colored interior, like what we see here inside the door. It's a bit old-fashioned, or maybe the right word is nostalgic, because I do mean it in a positive way. This reminds me of classic cars like the first-gen Corvette or the BMW 507, which is my personal dream car. Both quintessential roadsters, both great cars to be thinking of when you're driving your Miata. Now, this you do not get on the sport trim, but on Club, which is this one, and on Grand Touring, that is standard. Because we have the BBS Recaro package, I obviously have the Recaro seats. They're heated, they're nice and comfy, not huge, but a good size for me. I like the bolstering. Everything feels pretty good. Speaking of comfort, here's a new for 2024 feature. Center console is a little bit more padded now, so that's nice. We don't have a glove box, really not a lot of storage space in here. Locking center console back here is standard. The cup holders are frankly ridiculous. I'm sitting where I need to be to get the clutch all the way down, obviously pretty far from the back. This would be really hard to reach my coffee while I'm driving. You can move them, which is nice, so if I don't have a passenger, I can put the cup holder here. I like that this is pretty stable. I used to have a 2008 328xi that had cup holders that come out of the dash here, and I one time, actually several times, pulled a bag up that was sitting on the floor and knocked my venti latte, and it sprayed all over everything. So having this be pretty firm is great. Dimensions are hardly worth mentioning. That's really just not what this cabin is about, obviously. But it is important to know that if headroom is something you need, which it isn't really a problem for me, if it's a problem for you, you get a little bit more with the soft top, 37.4 inches versus 36.8 with the hard top. I really like this hard top. It is so easy to open. It's just one touch. I just hold this toggle button. I didn't have to release that. The car does every step of this for me. Just sitting, waiting, it's like magic. I'm gonna fold that part down, and then the beep, and it says operation complete on the dash, which I love. So nice. Now, obviously you do sacrifice a little bit of cargo space for the hardtop mechanicals, so let's check that out. I have not yet found a way, I don't think there is one, to open the trunk from the outside. You either have to do what I just did and pop it from inside, or use the button on the key. Now, with the soft top, we would have 4.59 cubic feet of cargo space in here. With the hard top, that gets trimmed to 4.48. Not huge. I can fit my backpack and not a lot else, really. Maybe a couple of backpacks. 2024 Miata gets a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine that makes 181 horsepower and 151 pound-feet of torque. But here's the great thing about this car. It is not the most powerful engine, but this car is small, it's loud, it's lightweight, it's close to the ground, it's communicative. You can have a ton of fun behind the wheel without ever exceeding the speed limit, or staying pretty darn close. It's not like one of these performance cars where you really have to get it out on a track to let it stretch its legs. You can have a really good time in this out on public roads, totally behaving. It's basically the anytime, anyplace sports car. This one has the 6-speed manual transmission, and I really like it. The throws are short, they're tightly spaced, it's got a nice action, very pleasant to operate. And I also really want to give kudos to Mazda for making this the default option. You have to go all the way up to the top trim if you want the automatic, and I really respect that. It just feels appropriate, feels authentic, feels very representative of where we've come from. Very much appreciate that they're doing that rather than charging extra for the privilege of rowing your own gears. The Miata Club, which I'm driving, is sport-tuned, it gets Bilstein dampers, and new for 2024, it gets an asymmetric limited slip diff. So that's supposed to give you a bit more lockup under engine braking and a bit less under acceleration. It is a little tough to tell that difference out on public roads, but it's a pretty cool feature, standard on the Club and on the GT trim. Something new that I have not had an opportunity to test because I haven't been able to get this out on the track is the DSC track feature. That's new. It's a midway setting for the dynamic stability control system. That used to be all or nothing, but now on the Club and GT trims, you can basically get it to give you a little bit more leeway to have some fun, but it'll still intervene if things go really sideways. Another update for 2024, the Miata's got a new steering rack and a revised electric steering assist system. Now, to be honest, it's a bit tough to recall precisely what the steering felt like the last time I drove it. I had no complaints then, I have no complaints now, but Chris Wardlaw, who really knows his Miatas, he's owned several, and who did the written review on this car for us, he felt that this was a very impactful update. He said he felt that it remedied some unwelcome lightness in the steering feel and just made the car feel more secure, more confident handling at high speeds. I would absolutely agree that this does feel confident and planted, and it's a joy to drive. The ride is really not terrible unless, of course, the road itself is truly terrible. But just going over your run-of-the-mill bumps in this thing, I would say it's at least as comfortable as other vehicles in the class, if not more so. Fuel economy may not be your main reason for seeking out a Miata, but I can tell you that it's rated for 26 miles per gallon city, 34 highway. That's with the soft top and the manual. And it will prompt you to shift. It's got some kind of funny ideas about what gear you should be in. For example, right now I'm going 35 miles per hour and it keeps telling me I should shift from 4th to 6th. That is, of course, because of fuel economy. Lots of modern cars do that these days. This 8.8-inch infotainment display is new for 2024, bigger than the old one, and it's standard. For the first time, we've got Alexa integration, which is supposed to give you more hands-free operation capability. That's maybe not the solution people were looking for, although it is a solution to the scroll wheel situation, because this is still only a touchscreen if you're in Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. So wired connectivity is standard. It becomes wireless for Apple CarPlay only, starting with this trim, which also gets a 9-speaker Bose premium audio system with speakers in both headrests. So even the base trim will have a speaker in your driver's seat, but if you want to entertain your passenger as well with your playlist, you're going to need the Club or the Grand Touring. Because we can only ever have one passenger, we only need 2 USB-C ports. They're right here, standard on every trim. That's all you're going to get. It can be a little scary driving something this small, largely because of the size of other vehicles, and I mean largely, literally. I once spent a terrifying 45 minutes in a Miata on the Bourne Bridge, the route to Cape Cod from Boston, bumper-to-bumper traffic with a GMC truck in front of me, next to me, and behind me, just praying that they would not forget I was there because I'm basically at eye level with their hubcaps. So that was a little bit scary, and Mazda has equipped the Miata with plenty of standard safety tech. One thing I'll mention is that adaptive cruise control is not standard. You're only going to get that on the top trim and only if you have the automatic. Not totally unusual for automakers to not equip adaptive cruise control with a manual. Basically, in terms of safety, I trust Mazda and I trust myself. What I'm worried about is other drivers on the road, but that's really not enough to make me stop driving small sports cars or motorcycles for that matter. The 2024 Mazda MX-5 Miata starts at $30,170. That's for the base sport trim with the cloth top. The Miata RF, the hardtop, which you will see listed separately on Mazda's website, remember that only comes in club and grand touring trim, so it's automatically starting at that midpoint, $41,395, again including destination. If we do a trim-to-trim comparison between the soft and the hard tops, we're gonna find that the premium for getting the hard top is $2,725 on that grand touring trim. There isn't really a lot out there to challenge the Miata in terms of new cars. If you're looking for a sports car in this price range, you're probably looking at the Subaru BRZ or the Toyota GR86. Both are great, but so is this. They're all just a little bit different. So if that's where you're shopping, you're gonna wanna try them all. Now, if you have your heart set on the convertible, after this, you're really just looking at the BMW Z4 or the Porsche Boxster, and those are obviously in a whole other price range. So basically, we've established that there really aren't any substitutes. If what you're looking for is a Miata, then what you want to get is a Miata. And now the question becomes, which Miata? Hopefully this video has helped to inform you on why you might want a 2024, what's changed for that model year as opposed to earlier ones. The other big question though is hardtop or soft top. Personally, I would go for the hardtop, even though it's more expensive. I think it's more livable. Feels like you're getting the best of both worlds. I really like how it looks, so I'd go for that, but there is a strong argument for the soft top as well. It's a lightweight, simple car. That's just its ethos. Soft top's gonna be lighter weight and simpler. I will say though, the hard top has a better weight distribution. 51-49 front to rear, near perfect. Of course, the soft top is 52-48, so really not bad. But I wanna hear from you. Which one would you choose and why? Please subscribe to this channel and do your shopping at CarGurus.com.